Carl, I'm a little frustrated by how long this is all taking. I think Rudy Giuliani has a point when he says, come on, let's see the evidence. At some point, don't the American people deserve these answers sooner rather than later?
I think you have to wait until the end of a very deliberative investigation that Mueller is making. And what we know and what that Washington Post story and the New York Times story show is that Mueller is operating, as has been members of the president's own national security team, Mattis, among others, some people who are still there, some who have left, that indeed he has become a pawn of the Russians. Now, whether that is a witting pawn, an unwitting pawn, a half-witting pawn, that is something that perhaps Mueller's report will tell us, because one of the things Mueller is doing is that he is looking at the obstruction of justice by the President of the United States that seems to be apparent, and whether the obstruction itself has furthered Putin's aims and becomes part of some kind of collusive notion.
You teed this up on Wednesday. I noticed this on Anderson Cooper show Wednesday night. You teed up this exact point that the Post and the Times are now making. Let's play that clip first from Wednesday night.
There's been an obstruction of justice. There's no question about that. No question about the president's involvement in that obstruction. One of the questions that Mueller is trying to answer, I believe, is whether that obstruction itself furthered the interests of the Russians.
Bingo. You said the obstruction is not separate from the collusion question. These investigations are linked. This is exactly what these newspapers are signaling this weekend. So how do you know that? Where is this coming from?
Well, first of all, the New York Times and the Washington Post were more advanced on the story than I was, but I did know something. And part of what I know comes from lawyers of some of the other defendants in this matter who have appeared before Mueller, including members of the joint defense team, which collaborates with the White House. And those lawyers believe the president has been lying at every turn about his relationship with Russia, about those of his aides. Look, let us look at all of the lies. Follow the money, follow the lies. They are all mostly and most vehemently about Russia, whether we're talking about Flynn, Trump, his son, Kushner, back to lying about questions having to do with Russia, about what happened at the Trump Tower meeting. The President of the United States drafts a totally false statement about what happened at that meeting that his son was at. Look, you set it up right. We don't know the answers. But what we do know is that Donald Trump has tried to convince us that unless there is some kind of smoking gun, a recording of him in the room with Putin saying, yes, Vladimir, I'll do you bidding, there's been, quote, no collusion. That's nonsense. What this counterintelligence investigation was about, unprecedented. The FBI, and this is not about the deep state, this is about the most serious counterintelligence people we have in the U.S. government saying, oh my God, the president's words and action lead us to conclude that somehow he has become a witting, unwitting, or half-witting pawn, certainly in some regards, to Vladimir Putin. Look, Trump keeps going back to the idea we need better relations with Russia. Could be. He could well be right. But from a point of view of strength, and what everybody can see is that he has not acted with Russia from the United States having a strength advantage with Russia. Rather, he has done what appears to be Putin's goals. He has helped Putin destabilize the United States and interfere in the election, no matter whether it was purposeful or not. And that is part of what the draft of Mueller's report, I'm told, is to be about. What fits hand in glove is both the cover-up and the possibility, likelihood. We know there's been collusion. We know there's been collusion by Flynn. We know there's been collusion of some sort by Manafort. The question is, yes, what did the president know and when did he know it? But also, it could be unwitting, half-witting. That's what we're going to find out. But the idea that this is just benign behavior and conduct, there is nothing benign about what the consequences of this have been. What the hell happened at Helsinki? Dan Coates the director of national intelligence still does not know
Doesn't
happened at Helsinki, because the president, as that a great Washington Post story points out, hasn't allowed his aides to know or to say what they know about what happened at Helsinki and in his other meetings with Putin. Why is he so beholden? And you know, it's his son that told us years ago, hey, we do a tremendous amount of business in Russia. It is the source of a huge amount of our family income. Well, clearly Mueller's looking at that.
I was watching Good Morning America this weekend, and both mornings they led with snowstorms and scares at malls and other stories, and not this. And I just keep wondering if the public is ill-served if we don't make it really clear what the stakes of this story are. How can a morning show not lead with this drama, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think plenty of times we lead with this drama.
On cable, I agree.
And we lead also with what is becoming the looming question over all of this. And even Fox reporters are now asking this question of some of their sources. And that is, do Republicans particularly believe that this president is a threat to the national security, as my colleague Bob Woodward's book demonstrates, and as Mattis, McMaster, Kelly, others, Tillerson came to believe, that the President of the United States himself is a threat to the security of the United States, to the national security? We've never had a situation like this before. And so now we need to be looking at that question. What are Republicans on the Hill saying to each other? Those Fox reporters know some of what they're saying, just as AP reporters, CNN reporters, Washington Post reporters. We now know that there are more and more questions being asked. Is the President of the United States, is Donald Trump fit to be the President of the United States? And what this Mueller story and what the Washington Post story and the New York Times story reflects is the question of whether he's fit to be the President, as does the government shutdown. There's a question of competence. We do not have an effective governance from the White House right now. We have chaos, misinformation, disinformation, lying, and never before has lying look, Nixon lied. Nixon lied to further the cover-up. He was a criminal president, but throughout his presidency, Nixon did not lie about virtually everything of importance. We have, and Fox News reporters know this too, we have a President of the United States who lies. It sounds pejorative when I say this. And one of the problems we have as reporters is that it's so unique to be saying these things that sound pejorative when in fact they're based on hard, repertorial, contextual fact.
Right. It's sad, but it's true. And we've got to stay with what's true. Carl, thank you so much for being here, kicking us off this morning.